There are many creatures in ARK, all having their own unique utility, whether that be as a battle mount, a harvesting mount, a traveling mount, or in this case, a support mount. In this video, I'll be showcasing my top 5 best support creatures you could tame in ARK Survival Ascended. These creatures are extremely useful when it comes to buffing your damage dealer's output, defense, and keeping them healthy for long periods of time. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. Kicking things off at number 5, we have the Ceratosaurus, a newer addition to ARK that came with the ARK Edition's creatures, which in fact was the first to come to the game. It is an aggressive, medium-sized carnivore around the same size as the Carno, which you can find spawning in jungles or carnivore islands on most maps, scorched earth's mountainous regions, mostly inside the desert dome on Extinction, and some parts of the wasteland. To tame one, you will need to kill a bunch off beforehand, where you can loot their death cache for Cerato venom spines. You'll need a good amount of these to craft a bunch of hemoglobin cocktails unlocked at level 60, which can be crafted in a cooking pot, requiring 15 blood packs, 10 narcotic, and 10 Cerato venom spines, which is just for one, so you will most likely need a good amount of them depending on your taming rates. So once you have your concoctions at the ready, you will need to nominate a tanky creature from your arsenal. Of course, a good saddle will always help. Once you have your sights set on the Cerato you want to tame, force feed the cocktail to your creature, which will cause the Ceratosaurus to aggro and attack your creature. The more it attacks, the more drunk it gets. Once fully drunk, it will become passive and begin wandering off. This is where you can begin feeding it passively with extraordinary kibble from your final hotbar slot for the best taming effectiveness, but any type of meat will work if you do not have access to that. It will remain in this state for only 10 minutes, so if not tamed within the time frame, you will have to repeat the process again until tamed. Another useful thing to note is that if you can aggro more than one Cerato at a time, their drunkenness levels will increase much quicker. And once tamed, can be saddled up at level 60, where you will have yourself a sweet little land mount, sharing similarities to the Carno in terms of stats, having a great sprint speed while being more than capable of defending itself from most threats with its directional bite attack. Its secondary attack comes in the form of a horn thrust or tail spin attack. The type of attack depends on which direction you are facing your camera. Looking forward will perform the horn thrust, and looking to the left, right, or behind will perform a tail spin. The Ceratosaurus becomes faster the longer it sprints for, and when reaching over 75%, it can plow through rocks and trees while also having the ability to perform a much stronger horn thrust attack. This can be done by pressing and holding the alternate attack button. The horn thrust and tail spin will also inflict targets with the envenomed debuff. This also occurs when attackers hit the Ceratosaurus. The envenomed debuff will last for 8 seconds, and whenever it ends will apply a healing surge to the Ceratosaurus. The healing effect is based on the target's maximum health, so the more health they have, the better the healing surge. And this is when it becomes a great support mount, as it can share this healing surge with any allied tamed carnivores that attack the affected target. Adding to that, it is also one of the few debuffs that actually works on bosses, making them a great mount to take into boss fights for that extra bit of support. Moving on to another powerhouse, we have the Mammoth, which is a great all-rounder for its harvesting, fighting, and support capabilities. A gentle giant found commonly roaming the colder areas on most maps. A simple knockout tame preferring superior kibble for the best taming effectiveness, but you'll most likely tame your first one on any berries you can find. Once saddled up at level 31, will no doubt see you owning one of the strongest creatures you could own at such a low level, with strong stats across the board including high health, damage, and weight, while also being surprisingly fast and agile for such a big boy. Having strong attacks at his disposal that deal high damage and knockback to targets, including a directional tusk swipe attack. When facing the camera forward, will perform a tusk jab with high DPS, and when facing the camera to the left or right, performs a tusk sweep, which is slower to perform but can be used to gather large amounts of thatch and berries. A secondary trunk grab that can pick up small creatures and humans, carrying them around, or yeet. And finally, a tertiary stomp attack, dealing the most amount of damage and knockback, but with a slower DPS. This attack is what makes it one of the best wood gatherers in the game, while also giving wood a whopping 75% weight reduction. And it has all this utility before we even mention its support qualities. It has its own trunk bellow, which has multiple uses. Once used, will inflict the intimidated debuff to targets, lasting for 15 seconds, which can be replenished whenever using the trunk bellow. Any targets affected will have their damage decreased by 25%, 100%. This ability is also stated to work against bosses, but from my experience doesn't seem to alter the attack damage of the main bosses in the game. However, if playing PvP, this ability will also negate the use of bolas and net projectiles. If standing in water, the trunk will give the player a free shower and hydrate them, plus also storing 1 charge in its trunk. This can also be used to cancel any burning effects, for example the Fire Wyvern's breath attack, or the Pyromane's inflamed debuff, just to name a few. And finally, the Mammoth is equipped with a passenger seat with a set of war drums. The player can bang out a tune to match the beats, which will give any nearby allies and creatures with a rider the ready for war buff. This makes them completely immune to the Uteranus Furor. All of these reasons is why the Mammoth has and always will be one of my favourite creatures in the game. In at number 3, we have the old faithful Daedon, an extremely valuable creature that belongs at the heart of this list. The Daedon is an aggressive mammal found very commonly in the colder areas on most maps, and pretty much everywhere on Scorched Earth minus the mountains and the sand dunes. Relatively easy to tame as they can be bowled and tamed via typical knockout methods, preferring superior kibble for the best taming effectiveness, or if you're cray-cray, any type of meat, once tamed can be saddled up at level 59. They have great health and average damage, a decent sprint speed, and can jump. However, the player can use their weapons while mounted, which is super helpful as the Daedon is never really used to output any damage themselves. With a melee character build, you can honestly just sit on top of a Daedon for the most part and slice and dice up most of the threats with ease. A friend of mine likes to run the hard snow cave on a Daedon pumped in health, equipped with almost only rare flowers and an ascendant sword or two, making the cave a breeze. The Daedon is mostly tamed for its healing capabilities alone. When mounted, the player can trigger its healing surge by pressing the alternate attack. This can also be triggered when unmounted, which can be done via accessing its radial menu and enabling passive healing. This ability is what makes it a great support mount for healing up your army before or after boss fights, or during if you want to ride one into the battle. The only downside of the Daedon is that it will chow down on food like there is no tomorrow, but if you have plenty of food at your disposal, there is a small solution for this. If your creatures do need a lot of healing, you can chuck all the food inside it, and if you are the only player in the area, you can either leave render distance and fly back again, or leave the game and rejoin, and it will have consumed all the food that you gave it, instantly refilling its food stat. The Daedon has and always will be one of a kind in this respect. Speaking of one of a kind, we have another that can take away the title, which is going to be the Snow Owl. A beautiful creature and one of my favourites in the game. And it may be pretty, but in the wild, it is very aggressive and aggroes onto almost everything. You'll find them spawning in the colder regions on later map installments. Tamed via knockouts and preferring superior kibble for the best taming effectiveness, or with any type of meat if not having access to that. Once tamed, can be saddled up at level 61 and will see you traversing any map in style. With its relatively quick flying speed and ability to dive and swoop through the air like it just don't care, and at super fast silent assassin speeds. When diving, it can smash into the ground. Any targets within the area of effect will temporarily be slowed while also receiving damage reduction from all incoming attacks. It comes into its own with its healing capabilities. When pressing and holding the alternate attack when landed, can encase creatures and players in ice, which can be performed as long as its stamina will allow. This effect keeps the creature frozen, pauses food consumption, and restores 65 health per second. Incoming damage is also reduced by 87.5%. Similar to the Daedon, it is great for healing singular or small groups of creatures, however does not suffer from the same ridiculous food consumption like the Daedon does. The Snow Owl is hands down the best and quickest way to heal a player's health over anything else in the game. It's pretty much almost instant regen. Another unique perk of the Snow Owl's heal is that it can be used on wild creatures too, making it the only creature that can do this in the game, which pretty much means you can tame anything without the risk of it dying, or if it is almost dead, just simply heal it up and begin the taming process. This is especially useful when taming herbivores, which have no possible way to naturally quickly heal their own health. Added to that, this ability is lovely for fully deflating a gas bags when attempting to tame one, causing them to take the full effect of any trank weaponry. As a fighter, it does not possess the strongest bite by any means, but when it comes to scouting, it is an invaluable asset to any player. With its infrared vision, it allows the player to see clearly now the ground clutter is gone, seeing all obstacles in your way, highlighting any threats that the naked eye could easily miss. This is also a really good way to find wild beehives. The Snow Owl is also a great creature to have around your base, as its poop comes in the form of Snow Owl pellets, which make for great fertilizer, holding a massive 50,000 units, which is only 4k units less than actual fertilizer. So your crops will absolutely love it. Having a Snow Owl parked in front of your gadgets is also a good idea, as the pellets will boost the loot quality rarity that the gacha crystals drop. All of these reasons are what makes the snow owl one of the best support creatures in the game. And taking the number 1 spot is none other than the Yutyrannus. It's been featured in many of my top 10 creature lists, and this is probably the most fitting list for it. The Yuti will always be at the forefront of battle, leading you and your armies to victory. A large and louder than life, highly aggressive carnivore which you'll find spawning in the colder regions on most maps, or in the mountains of Scorched Earth. Tamed via knockout and preferring extraordinary kibble for the best taming effectiveness, or with any type of meat you can get your hands on. Once tamed, will be saddled up at level 80, the Yutyrannus is predominantly known for its support capabilities. However, it's still a pretty decent battle mount too, sharing similar stats to the T-Rex. Although it deals less damage with its bite and has a slower DPS, it is much faster and more maneuverable than the Rex with a much tighter turning radius. It has 2 unique roars at its disposal, the first being the Fear. Any affected targets receive the Fear debuff, reducing their damage and damage resistance by 50%, and if 100% affected, will frantically flee in a confused manner. Any affected mounts with riders will not be able to control their creature for the duration of the effect. This roar can also scare out buried Palovias, which for me makes the Yuti a great mount for running the hard snow cave on the island, as all creatures in this cave are affected by the roar. You will of course need a cryopod to get it past the main entrance, but it will then have full access to the cave after that. Its second roar is the Courage Roar, and the main reason that makes the Yutyrannus one of the most sought after creatures in the game, giving any affected allies the Courage buff, increasing their damage resistance by 20% and damage output by 25% for the duration, which will pretty much be constant when in range of the allied roaring Yutyrannus, making them the most valuable asset in any boss arena or large-scale battles. Adding to this, it does also have a turret mode, allowing it to stay in position using its Fear Roar to scare away any attackers that get too close. However, when playing single player, it does also have an auto courage option via the radial menu, which can definitely make life easier when playing the game as a solo. And although I never ever use it, you can also use the Courage Roar on up to 3 wild Carnos to temporarily have them fight for you. I would be very interested to know in the comments if you guys have ever actually used this ability. It would be nice to see if anyone does or not. All of these reasons is why the Yutyrannus is basically royalty when it comes to a support mount. And that is going to be the end of the video for today. I will admit that I did want to do a top 10 on this subject, but there wasn't really enough valuable support creatures in the game to really warrant a top 10. But here is some honorable mentions that are also very valuable support creatures for many different reasons. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and if you did, please don't forget to like, comment, share around, and subscribe for more, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care, goodbye.